Hello, and welcome back to Channel Zero TV with John and John. I'm John,
And I'm John.
and tonight we're going to introduce you to the advertising wonders of Stan Freberg. Who is Stan Freberg, you might ask? Well, John, do you want to give a bit of an introduction to the man?
Stan Freberg is a bit of a comedy polymath. He started out as a voice man at Warner Brothers Studios in the 1940s, the golden age of like Looney Tunes cartoons. He moved into radio. He moved into television. He was a writer, a producer, a director. He did a little bit of everything. He had a very striking appearance with the horn-rimmed glasses and that round, placid face of his. And in the mid-1950s, he started an advertising agency. And the fascinating thing about this is the man had absolutely no background in advertising whatsoever, but he was a very, very funny guy and he could write short, sharp stuff. And this is back in the day when that was enough to launch an extremely successful career in advertising.
And he really sort of brought humor into advertising. It wasn't unknown, but it was unusual. So why don't we watch a couple of his commercials, then we'll come back and talk about his work in advertising and his work in animation, puppets, record recordings. So let's look now at some of the advertising work of Stan Freberg.
John.
Marcia.
John.
Marcia.
John. John.
Snowdrift.
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 John.
Marcia.
John.
Marcia!
John.
Snowdrift.
Snowdrift.
Marcia!
John. John.
Marcia.
John.
Snowdrift, the Wesson oil shortening.
So that was a little bit of his animation work in advertising. Before we look at some of his live action, John, you want to talk about John and Marcia a little bit?
John and Marcia was a case where Stan Freberg was cannibalizing one of his old routines. That was off of one of his comedy LPs. And it's a classic because literally for, I think, 4.5 minutes, the two actors just intone the words John, Marcia back and forth to each other in these increasingly inane, passionate tones. And what he was making fun of was the acting style, quite literally still prevalent on radio afternoon soap operas. You know, he then took this material and cut it down to like about a minute. And through the miracle of animation, I believe that animation came from UPA Studios, again, one of our ongoing classic animation interests, and they got the whole routine down to like 1 minute, including a advertisement for snowdrift shortening
With one other word in the dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it was interesting to see comedy elements. Again, you know, when he was working in advertising, this was not completely unknown, but still unique. And the fact that he could draw upon his old material was kind of an interesting phenomena.
Well, that he was also willing to just cut it down to like 1 minute. Other people would, of course, you know, been indignant about like bowdlerizing their own work. But of course, Stan was like, "Oh hell no, let's saddle up."
So let's take a look at one other of his commercials that sort of caught my eye. I thought was intriguing. This one is live action. Then we'll come back. We'll talk more about Stan and his work.
Boy, am I hungry. What kind of soup is that?
Make way for the Great American Soup.
Can you give me that again?
Up at the Ritz, they passed the word to 42nd Street. Make way for the Great American Soup. Hey, mister, have you tried the soup that's good enough to eat? Shake hands with the Great American Soup. Feel that rhythm, guide your feet on the soupy road to romance. Let's face the chicken gumbo and dance. Who's got its noodles up in lights from Broadway to the Loop?
Why do you always have to make such a big production out of everything?
So that was fun. That was also one of his most high production numbers. A lot of his other commercials are kind of more intimate settings, albeit with sort of very wacky characters. He also like seemed to be advertising a lot of pretty mundane products: soup, prunes, frozen pizza rolls. So I guess he was sort of landing companies that were kind of ready to be a little experimental.
Yeah, his breakthrough was for Contadina tomato paste. How they get 8 great big tomatoes in that itty bitty can. Um, I think that was sort of the joy of his life, is he could take these really mundane household products and make them very funny and make them very ubiquitous. And by the way, watching that commercial for the Great American Soups, we have got to make a pact, you and I, that one of these days we're going to do a podcast about industrial musicals.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I know he had some larger contracts as well, and as you said, he was a successful advertiser. But he also created some of the most sort of memorable kind of second tier characters in animation. In the Warner Brothers cartoon, he was Pete Puma, the sort of goofy lion. In a couple of Bugs Bunny cartoons, he was the Junior Bear in this sort of three bears kind of parody. I would say a lot of his other characters, the puppet show you're seeing now, some of the parody records that he did of things like kind of Lawrence Welk. Sadly, those have sort of faded as the people he was parodying were forgotten. But some of his characters and even a couple of these commercials, live on. I certainly remember his commercial for Zagnut, which we won't show here, but sort of candy bar commercial was extremely memorable.
Yeah, well, in my mind, there's really only 2 types of satirists. There's satirists who satirize things that are important, sometimes things that are of absolute life and death importance. And then there are satirists that go after what's popular. And I think Stan Freberg is more a satirist who went after things that are popular. And that's not to say one is better from the other or preferable in any way. They're both very important, but they are very, very distinct modes of satire all the same.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the risks is satirizing things that are popular at the moment. The satires sort of fade when the popular target is forgotten. Funny, similar even, I'm thinking like how Warner Brothers cartoons were very careful to avoid contemporary references because I think they knew they were making cartoons for the ages. And then, if I think of Stan Freberg, the things that people probably remember for him now are characters he created in the sort of 50s for Warner Brothers. But he had a huge footprint. I mean, he really, wouldn't necessarily say revolutionized advertising, but made it safe to be funny in the TV commercial. Some of his comedy spoken work kind of anchored some of that era where sort of spoken comedy on record albums and radio were all the rage. Again, that's sort of been replaced by stand-up now, but Freeberg was really sort of in the middle of countless entertainment trends.
Oh yeah. No, he's at the time he was very cutting edge. He hosted the last great sketch-driven radio show, the Stan Freberg Show, which was brought in, in like 1957 to replace Jack Benny over the summer. And the main reason it didn't perpetuate on radio is just simply because they couldn't find a sponsor. Which is ironic, giving all his advertising work. They couldn't find a sponsor with deep enough pockets to keep it going.
Well, it's interesting. I know that he refused to carry on with the sponsor for the Benny Show, which was a cigarette company. He did not want to be associated with tobacco products. Haven't seen his whole oeuvre on the advertising front, but they seem to be relatively safe products. Although, the pizza rolls he used to run ads, I have issues with. Anyway, a real pioneer. I think somebody that deserves to be remembered, and I hope you got a little taste of some of his work and may want to Google some more. But before we split for tonight, John, do you want to tell our listeners, particularly ones who are in the Boston area, about our upcoming return to live entertainment?
Yes, indeed. If you're in the Boston area at the Somerville Theater in Somerville, Massachusetts, in Davis Square, October 8th at 8 p.m., we're going to be down in their micro cinema in the basement, 31 seats, and we will be screening Comrade Don Camillo, 1965, starring Fernandel as the wily Italian priest who blackmails his way onto a goodwill tour of the Soviet Union undertaken by certain Italian communists and makes absolute comical mayhem out of the whole thing. So it's a bit of a Cold War comedy. Admission is $7.50, cash only. Now, this is the Somerville Theater. They have some COVID restrictions. You need to be able to produce proof of vaccination, or else you're going to need a negative COVID-19 test that's at least 72 hours old. And of course, there are mask restrictions in Somerville, Massachusetts currently. But we hope to see you there. We're really looking forward to this. We've been, obviously off the books along with everyone else for more than a year now. So October 8th, 8 p.m., Somerville Theater, Comrade Don Camillo. Come see us.
Okay, we'll hope to see you there. And for those who might not be able to make it, we'll hope you join us next time on the next episode of Channel Zero TV. Till then, I'm John.
And I'm John.
And we'll hope to see you soon.